Hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, Jack and Tu Tien reach a quiet but life-changing milestone on their journey together. What begins as a simple prenatal checkup slowly turns into a moment that reshapes how they see the future. Inside a calm clinic room, a few gentle words from the doctor change everything, filling their hearts with emotions they didn't expect and dreams they haven't fully imagined yet. From the drive home to the conversations that follow, this episode captures the subtle shifts, fear, hope, responsibility, and love that come with realizing a new life is on the way. Stay with us until the end to feel the warmth of this moment. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support truly means the world to us. Morning settles slowly over the farmhouse, not rushing, not demanding attention, as if it understands that today deserves patience. The light coming through the windows is pale and gentle, spreading across the wooden floor in quiet bands. Outside, the air is cool, still carrying the faint scent of damp earth from the night before. Somewhere beyond the yard, birds begin their soft chatter, unaware that this ordinary morning holds a moment that will change two lives forever. Tu Tien stands near the window, adjusting her jacket with careful movements. She pauses, then exhales, one hand instinctively resting on her belly. It isn't very big yet, but to her, it already feels like the center of everything. Every flutter, every subtle sensation makes her more aware that her body is no longer just her own. Jack watches her from behind, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed. He tries to look relaxed, but his posture gives him away. His shoulders are stiff, his jaw slightly clenched. Today's appointment has been sitting in his mind since he woke up, replaying itself again and again. "You okay?" he asks, breaking the silence. Tu Tien turns around and smiles faintly. "I should be asking you that." Jack lets out a breathy laugh. "I'm fine, just thinking." "Dangerous," she teases. "Extremely," he agrees. Then more honestly, "I just want everything to be okay." She steps closer and takes his hands, pressing them gently against her belly. "It already is. We're okay." The simple certainty in her voice steadies him more than he expects. They head out to the car together, Jack locking the door behind them. The drive to the clinic feels longer than usual, even though the road is familiar. Fields stretch out on both sides, their green softened by morning haze. Jack drives slower than normal, eyes fixed forward, both hands gripping the steering wheel. Tu Tien watches him for a moment, then looks out the window. "You're nervous." "I'm not," he says automatically, then sighs. "Okay, maybe a little." "A little?" she asks, amused. "Fine, a lot." She laughs quietly. "So am I." The car hums steadily beneath them. For a while, neither speaks. The anticipation hangs in the air, heavy but not unpleasant. "Do you ever imagine what they'll look like?" Tu Tien asks after a while. Jack glances at her. "All the time." "Really?" "Yeah. Sometimes I imagine tiny hands. Sometimes I imagine them running around the yard, getting into trouble." She smiles at the thought. "That sounds accurate." "And sometimes," he adds, voice softer, "I imagine teaching them things, stuff I never thought I'd be ready to teach anyone." Tu Tien reaches over and squeezes his hand. "You'll be great." The clinic parking lot is already busy. Jack pulls into a space and immediately gets out to open her door. Tu Tien sighs dramatically, but doesn't stop him. "You know I can walk," she says. "I know," he replies. "Let me do this." Inside, the clinic is bright and calm. The air smells faintly of antiseptic, mixed with something warm, maybe tea from the staff room. The waiting area is filled with couples, most of them quiet, absorbed in their own thoughts. A newborn cries somewhere down the hall, the sound sudden and piercing. Jack freezes for a moment. "That's loud," he says. Tu Tien smiles knowingly. "Get used to it." They check in and sit down. Jack holds the medical folder like it's fragile. He opens it, closes it, then opens it again. "You've read that 3 times already," Tu Tien says. "I just want to make sure everything's right." She rests her head lightly against his shoulder. It is. Minutes pass slowly. Jack taps his foot, then stops when he notices. Tu Tien closes her eyes, focusing on her breathing, trying to stay calm. Finally, a nurse appears and calls Tu Tien's name. Jack is on his feet instantly. "Dad can come too," the nurse says with a smile. The examination room is cool, softly lit. Tu Tien lies back on the bed as the nurse prepares the ultrasound machine. Jack stands beside her, their fingers intertwined. "Cold gel," the nurse warns. Tu Tien winces as it touches her skin. "I'll never get used to that." Jack chuckles, though his eyes are glued to the screen. The doctor enters shortly after, greeting them warmly before focusing on the scan. The monitor flickers to life, showing abstract shapes that slowly become more familiar as the doctor adjusts the angle. "There we go," the doctor says. "That's your baby." Jack's breath catches. The heartbeat flickers on the screen, strong and steady. Tu Tien's eyes fill with tears. That's really them. The doctor continues calmly, checking measurements, describing progress. Everything looks healthy. Growth is exactly where it should be. Jack releases a long breath, tension draining from his body. Then the doctor looks at them. "Would you like to know the baby's gender today?" Jack and Tu Tien exchange a glance. This question has followed them home for weeks, hovering over late-night conversations and quiet moments. "Yes," Tu Tien says without hesitation. "Yes," Jack echoes, his voice slightly unsteady. The doctor turns back to the screen, studying it carefully. The room feels impossibly quiet. Jack leans forward, barely blinking. Seconds stretch. His heart pounds in his ears. "Well," the doctor says finally, pointing gently at the screen. "I'm confident in what I'm seeing." Jack grips Tu Tien's hand tightly. "You're having a baby girl." The words land softly, but carry enormous weight. Tu Tien blinks. "A girl," the doctor nods. "A healthy little girl." Tu Tien breaks down instantly, tears spilling as she laughs at the same time. "Jack, it's a girl." Jack feels his chest tighten. His vision blurs slightly. "Our daughter," he whispers. He leans down, resting his forehead against Tu Tien's. In that moment, everything feels real in a way it never has before. Not just the pregnancy, but the future. Birthdays, first steps, a life that will depend on them. The appointment wraps up gently. The doctor prints ultrasound photos and hands them over. Jack takes them carefully, staring as if trying to memorize every detail. Outside, the sunlight feels warmer. The air feels lighter. "So," Tu Tien says softly, "dad of a baby girl." Jack opens her door, still stunned. "I think my heart just grew 10 sizes." She smiles. "That's just the beginning." As they drive away, the ultrasound photo rests on the dashboard. Jack glances at it again and again. A daughter. Their daughter. And everything has just changed. The drive home feels unhurried, as if the road itself understands there's no need to rush anymore. Jack keeps the car at a steady pace, slower than usual, letting the scenery pass by in long, gentle stretches. Outside, the fields glow under the afternoon sun, rows of green blending into one another, familiar and comforting. Nothing in the world looks different, yet for both of them, everything has changed. Tu Tien rests back against the seat, one hand holding the medical folder, the other absent-mindedly tracing small circles on her belly. Inside the folder, the ultrasound photo feels heavier than paper should. Every now and then, she opens it slightly, just enough to glimpse the image, as if afraid that if she doesn't look often enough, the moment might slip away. Jack glances at her, then back to the road. His mind keeps replaying the doctor's voice. A baby girl. The words echo again and again, never losing their impact. "A girl," he murmurs, almost reverently. Tu Tien turns toward him with a small smile. "You're going to keep saying that all day, aren't you?" He lets out a soft laugh. Probably longer than that. She watches him carefully, noticing how his usual confidence has softened into something quieter, more thoughtful. "What's going on in your head right now?" Jack thinks for a moment before answering. "It feels like someone rearranged my entire life without asking me first," he says honestly. "And somehow, I'm grateful for it." Tu Tien nods. "I feel like the future suddenly became real. Not just plans or ideas, but something waiting for us." The car slows as Jack approaches a bend in the road he's driven through hundreds of times. Today, he takes it carefully, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel. "I used to think being ready meant having everything figured out," he says quietly. "Now, I think it just means being willing to figure things out as you go." She reaches over and squeezes his hand. "We'll learn together." When they finally pull into the farmhouse yard, the sun hangs lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the ground. Jack parks the car, but doesn't turn off the engine right away. The silence inside the car feels meaningful, almost sacred. "You want to go inside?" Tu Tien asks softly. "In a minute," he replies. "I just want to remember this part, the before." She understands immediately. They sit there quietly, listening to the faint ticking of the engine, both aware that this exact moment, this version of themselves, will never exist again. Inside the house, everything feels subtly altered. The furniture is the same, the air smells the same, yet the space feels fuller, like it's already making room for someone new. Jack places the ultrasound photo carefully on the table, smoothing it flat with his palm. He stares at it for a long moment. "That's our daughter," he says softly, almost in disbelief. Tu Tien steps beside him. "She's been with us all along. We just didn't know her name yet." Jack straightens suddenly. "We should tell everyone." She laughs gently. You look like you're about to explode if you don't. I really am, he admits. How do people keep this kind of news to themselves? They start with Jack's mother. The moment he says the words, "It's a girl," there's a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, followed by laughter layered with emotion. A granddaughter, she says, her voice trembling. Oh, Jack, that's beautiful. Jack smiles wider than he has all day. She's healthy. Everything looks perfect. Thank goodness, his mother replies. I can already picture her running around this house. When the call ends, Jack sits quietly for a second, phone still in his hand. She's already planning everything, he says softly. Tu Tien smiles. That's what grandmothers do. Her own call is just as emotional. As soon as she says, "It's a girl," her voice breaks. Tears slip down her cheeks as her mother speaks, every word filled with pride and tenderness. A little girl, her mother says softly. You're going to be a wonderful mother. Tu Tien wipes her eyes, smiling through the tears. I hope I can be. After the calls, the house settles into a calm, contented silence. It feels like the news itself is lingering in the air, wrapping around the walls. Jack disappears into the bedroom for a moment and returns carrying an old notebook, its cover worn and familiar. Tu Tien narrows her eyes playfully. What's that? He sits beside her on the couch. Promise you won't judge. She laughs. No promises. He opens the notebook. Inside, page after page is filled with names, some neatly written, some scribbled out, some circled with notes beside them. You've been thinking about this for a while, she says softly. I didn't realize how much until now, he admits. I guess part of me was already preparing. They go through the list together, debating gently. Some names feel too formal, others too playful. A few spark immediate reactions. No, Tu Tien says firmly, pointing at one. Absolutely not. Jack grins. What's wrong with it? It sounds like she'd boss us around. He laughs. She probably will anyway. As the afternoon fades, Jack suddenly stands up. Let's go into town. Tu Tien looks surprised. Now? Yeah, he says. I just feel like we should. They walk slowly through a small baby store tucked between familiar shops. The moment Jack steps inside, he stops short. Rows of tiny clothes line the walls, pastel colors glowing softly under the lights. Oh, he mutters. Tu Tien watches him with quiet amusement. What? This is overwhelming, he says honestly. How is everything so small? He picks up a tiny dress, holding it carefully like it might break. She's going to fit into this? Tu Tien nods. Eventually. They don't buy much. Just one simple dress, pale yellow and soft to the touch. Nothing extravagant. Just something to mark the moment. Something real they can hold. Back home, Jack places the dress gently in a drawer, closing it slowly, as if sealing a promise. That evening, they sit on the porch together. As the sky shifts from gold to deep blue, Jack brings out 2 cups of warm tea and hands one to Tu Tien. They sit close, shoulders touching, watching the stars begin to appear. Do you feel different now? He asks quietly. She thinks for a moment. I feel steadier, like everything has a direction. Jack rests his hand gently on her belly. Hey, he whispers, feeling a little awkward but sincere. It's your dad. Tu Tien smiles, placing her hand over his. She hears you. He swallows. I don't know if I'll do everything right, but I promise I'll always show up. Tu Tien leans into him. That's all she'll ever need. Later, as they prepare for bed, Jack pauses in the doorway. Are you scared? Tu Tien considers the question carefully. Yes, she says. But it's not the kind of fear that makes me want to run. It's the kind that comes with love. He nods slowly. That's exactly how I feel. They lie down together, the room quiet except for their breathing. Jack keeps one hand resting protectively near her belly, feeling the gentle rise and fall beneath his palm. A girl, he whispers one last time. Tu Tien smiles in the dark. Our girl. Sleep eventually finds them, calm and unhurried. And in the quiet of the night, the future no longer feels distant or overwhelming. It feels close, waiting patiently, ready to meet them when the time comes.